class. Well, first of all, the semester is almost over and you guys have done a great job of going through the material. I have very much enjoyed reading your reaction papers each week. It helps me know that you are understanding the content and able to apply it to your lives. A little bit behind schedule, but as promised, we will go over the quizzes now so that you will have these to study and prepare for your final exam. The final exam is over chapters. Let me get to that page real quick. It's on a news item. The final exam will be posted tomorrow. I am putting some finishing touches on it this evening, but I will have it posted sometime tomorrow, and it will be due on Thursday, May 11th at 11:30 p.m. However, if you want to get it done before then, that would be great for me since I have to grade them all before grades are due. But it covers chapters 14, 17, and 18, which are covered in quiz 5, chapters 19, 20, and 21, which are covered in quiz 7, 22 and 23, which were on quiz 8, 28, 29, 30, 31. There were no quizzes on those chapters, so you need to make sure to go back and look at them. Chapters 32 and 33, which were quiz 9, chapters 34 and 35, quiz 10, and then chapters 36, 37, and the conclusion of the book, which there is not a quiz over, so make sure you look at those chapters. Once again, the final will be in 2 parts. There will be the quiz portion, where you will see a lot of these questions, and then some of the questions from the other chapters, and there will be an essay portion, which I will ask you to apply some of this knowledge into certain situations. So that's kind of what's coming up. This video is over quiz 5, and quiz 5 overall the class did very well. The average score was an 80, or so an 8 out of 10, and scores ranged from a 4 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, with most people getting an 80. 1, 2, 3, 4, with 4 people getting an 80. So there are a couple questions that we had some problems with, but we'll start with number 1 as soon as my computer pulls it up. Okay, number 1, and this chapter is 14, 15, and, well, I lost it again. 14, 17, and 18. So, one way to potentially prepare or practice for a crisis using social media is to use which of the following. And I was not expecting there to be as much variation in answers as this, because if you think about it, how would you prepare and practice? In what ways could you practice? The correct answer is virtual worlds. But the majority of the class who missed this question put text messaging. And I'm just unsure how you would practice going through a crisis scenario with text messaging. Our book talks about on page 287 through, that whole chapter, different ways that technology can be used. And with text messaging, it talks about transmitting messages, how you can use those as a mental health treatment tool, how things like that, but not how you can use it to practice or prepare for a crisis. However, if you go to page 293, it does say that these online worlds that are created can be a really great place to practice in that simulated environment. Question 2. It is important for schools to be aware of and prepared for students' independent use of social media during a crisis. Steps should be taken to discourage students from sending messages about the crisis before an official statement has been released. Is that true or false? The majority of the class got this correct. That is true. We do want to discourage students from sending those messages before an official statement is released, because we want to minimize panic, and we want to minimize the parents that are coming up to the school when they don't know the protocol. That's why we want that official statement to go out first. Let's see. And so, if I can find the page number on that, I'm not entirely sure where it's at, but it's in that chapter 14. It's in chapter 14, probably. It's somewhere there. Probably in this best practices area and effective strategies. Anyway, look there. Question 3. Pick one form of social media and explain how it may be used in crisis prevention and intervention. Provide an example. The majority of this class got it correct. All you had to do was pick one of the social media forms. You had text messaging, blogs, podcasts, video and image sharing, like YouTube and Flickr. You had social networking sites such as Facebook, microblogs, virtual worlds, wikis, internet forums, all of those options, and how they can all be used to benefit students in a crisis situation. I would just be familiar with some of those options and how you would use them. So, for instance, you wouldn't use text messaging to create a virtual world to practice crisis intervention. You use text messaging as a way to maybe assess mental health or to be a resource for students who need that line. So just what you would use them for. Question 4. The following description describes which of the following. The description is minimizes cultural references, sees people as all the same, and has a sense of being unbiased, fails to acknowledge differences limits, and which limits ability to assist diverse groups. So now we're moving into that chapter 17 area, which I need to flip to real quick. But this chapter is all about cultural considerations. And so they had this whole big table on page 341 that defined the continuum of cultural competence. And the one that I just described, where it minimizes cultural difference, that's cultural blindness. Once again, the majority of the class got that correct. But look at those and know which ones you're looking for. Question 5. The Fourth Amendment protects students from harassment based on race, color, national origin, sex, or disability. And that is false. It is not the Fourth Amendment. It is the 14th Amendment. And so that is on page 361. We're moving into the chapter on legal and ethical considerations. And it talks about an overview of laws pertinent to the school crisis intervention and response, and it's in that table. So once again, I would be familiar with that table. And I'd also be familiar with what the Fourth Amendment protects, which is that students have the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures in schools. Question 6. Why are schools encouraged to establish a tracking system to monitor disciplinary infractions and crimes at school? This question can be found in one of our supplemental articles, as well as on page 365, where it talks about campus security measures. Right, and it literally says, legal experts advise school districts to establish a tracking system in order to monitor disciplinary infractions and then to encourage staff and students to report incidents. And this data system allows the districts to determine the nature and the scope of crimes and violence. It allows for progress monitoring of students who have a lot of infractions. And then it helps the school, the data can let the school see what needs to be worked on within the school. So that's why they're encouraged to establish a tracking system. Any answer along those lines would have worked, but that was what I was looking for. I was very, very generous in giving points for that question, but I will not be as generous on the final. Question 7. When working in schools, you must be able to provide blank of parent notification. You need to tell others or write down exactly what was said and when. This was in the lecture that I provided over those legal and ethical cases that I found at NASS. The correct answer is documentation. A lot of people said you must provide proof of parent notification. You must provide, one of those kinds of words. And while I accepted it here, I will not accept that answer on the final. The correct terminology is a documentation. You must be able to provide where you documented that you told the parents. And so that is the correct answer. And then question 8. How can you protect yourself from liability? This is a multiple choice question. Keep good records, provide best practices responses, document training on crisis prevention and intervention, or all of the above. And that was a pretty obvious one. All of those things are important and they were all talked about in the lecture. But those are the answers to the questions for chapter 5, or for quiz 5. And once again, I would definitely look at those amendments and what they mean for the laws. Same with some of those cases that were provided. I would go back and look at the crisis cases that were presented in the lecture. There may be questions about some of those, especially on the written portion of your exam. Let's see, what else would I definitely look at in these chapters? You will want to know about school liability following a crisis, which ties into the lecture. Looking at that cultural competence piece, what's the tier 1 best practice? The book goes through a lot of that, and that'll be important to know. And then looking at those that continuum of cultural competence. And finally, in chapter 15, as we talked about, just being able to list, or chapter 14, being able to list and know some of those social media and technologies that can be used and how they can be used to benefit in crisis prevention and intervention.